The second heading of arguments against advertising that you mentioned fall under the heading of offensiveness.
Right.
The extreme version of that being obnoxiousness. And in many cases, we're exposed to advertising at inconvenient moments. Right. You're watching TV, and then there's an advertisement right at the climax of the movie, right, or something like that. Or the clearly obnoxiously repetitive advertising, or advertising that talks down to you. And so there's a whole genre of advertising that offends either my sense of what good taste is, or what lots of people would agree is good taste. Right. And that can lead to calls for some sort of control.
Regulation or banning,
Right.
Of course, the extreme control then of regulation or banning of advertising, just to get this out of the way first, as I claim, is censorship. Whenever the government is getting involved in trying to regulate information being put out, it is a form of censorship. Advertising is a form of free speech. The fact that people say advertisers are doing it for the sake of profit, so are newspaper editors. Every article written by a newspaper editor is done for the sake of profit for the newspaper. Very little of which many have today. But it's the same idea. So I think it's censorship to do any kind of regulation or banning of advertising. Now, getting back to the issue of taste and good taste, when people are talking about this, they usually never define what they mean by taste or good taste. And I have to start with the fact that taste, first of all, is just a value, something that we like or don't like. There are all kinds of things that each of us like that other people may not like. I like peanut butter, you like apple butter. I like sexy models in my TV commercial, you may prefer PBS plunge breaks. Taste in that sense is really kind of an optional value. It's not something that we all have to like. It just differs, it varies. And a lot of people, when they're complaining about advertising, are complaining about usually the product. Because research has shown that people tend to like ads for products that they like and use, dislike ads for products they don't like or don't use. Now, that takes us to the issue of good taste. I'm not claiming that advertisements are 100% in good taste. There's certain time slot when children are present and other things like that. But good taste is a skill, which is the ability to discriminate, make fine discriminations. So what advertisers, I think, have done in many, many cases is very fine discrimination in presenting their ads for products that might really be offensive, such as toilet paper. Procter & Gamble, Charmin bathroom tissues many years ago was people just couldn't stand certain kinds of commercials. There was the grocery store manager, Mr. Whipple, who said, ladies, please don't squeeze the Charmin. And people would have fits over this. This is disgusting. But I would say quite the contrary. That was a very good taste commercial, because we could think of a lot of, we could think about product and use, which we don't want to think about, that could be put there. They didn't do it. Right. And so the advertisers have gone way over backwards to present topics in good taste. Now, there other things. Lately, the commercials for Viagra and for prostate problems and for prescription drugs and so forth. Again, that still has to come back to the fact that you may not have prostate problems and you don't appreciate the ad, but someone who does appreciate it. Madison Avenue people have a bit of an earthy example that they use about this with taste. You may not appreciate, you may not have hemorrhoids and appreciate the Preparation H commercials, but people who do have them do appreciate them.
What about the residual examples that clearly are just in bad taste? If you have a free society and people are advertising their products, there are people who don't have good taste and they are coarse. Would you then just say, if the option is censorship, the preferred option is to develop kind of a thick skin, or you just have to tolerate a certain amount of coarseness if you're going to have a free society?
Well, I question how much in bad taste would actually occur. I mean, no doubt some of it would occur, but there are various ways of pressuring advertisers. I mean, consumers can raise all kinds of objections. There are advertising associations that have their own standards.
Right. So it'd be a market feedback.
Yeah. So the market though would provide its own feedback to regulate that.
All right, that leads into some of the third category, which is mostly economic considerations, that advertising can be a force for monopolistic presence, right, in a market, or tending toward that. One is that it raises barriers to entry, right, as you suggested. So if you are a larger corporation with deeper pockets, you can afford a big advertising budget, and that crowds out, say, the little guy, right, with a smaller advertising budget.
Yeah, this is a really old argument. It typically in the past has been used just against big Fortune 500 companies, not aimed at advertising in particular. It's been transferred to advertising because they said, like General Motors, U.S. Steel, tremendous assets. How can anybody come in and compete with them? Of course, in the years since, the Japanese have done just that, and in both cases, automobiles and steel. And you think computers, there was a company, still is a company called IBM, but guess who showed up in the 70s, Apple and Microsoft?
Right, two guys
aside from that,
right,
aside from that, they say the same thing about advertising, $3 billion a year from Procter & Gamble. How's anybody going to come in and compete with them? Well, my answer is that advertising is actually not a barrier to entry, but a means of entry. If you have a good product, like say an Apple computer or a Windows operating system, the advertising is what's going to make people aware of the existence of the product. If it's a better product, people are going to buy it. If they like it, they'll come back and buy it again. They'll spread good word-of-mouth communication. More people will buy. You get a snowball effect. The sales curve starts going up like that. That's exactly what happens typically historically. And so advertising is the means by which we get products out on the market and start eroding market share of those who are currently existing.
Right. But you have to have a good product and good marketing.
Primacy of the product, yeah. So you have to, without a good product, you have nothing, as the advertisers say.
The other variation on the monopolistic or economic inefficiency argument is just that it's wasteful, right? We spend billions, and I'm not sure what the numbers are, right, on advertising each year. Way more than is necessary even to get the word out, and sometimes it's just to make jokes or soft sell associations. And so the argument is that advertising in a market just pours money down the drain that could be better spent on various other things.
It basically increases prices, and it's not. It's really, the whole economic arguments are all really basically the same, because the idea is that advertising erects barriers to market entry with these huge budgets that people have. That's what enables them to then raise the price and reduce output and lower, society's welfare. No, I would say advertising lowers prices, contributes to the lowering of prices. The amount of money spent, 150 billion or 160 billion a year on advertising media expenditures, is less than is spent every year on what's called sales promotion. That's all the stuff like coupons and contests and little things to try and get an immediate response from the consumer.
Okay.
It's also less than the amount spent on personal selling. So, first of all, factually, the amount of money, people are incorrect, and what's going on here is, like, advertising is so visible, it becomes, it's the point man, it's the target, and so let's go after that one. What is done with the money? Well, it's examples from research. There are companies who've had sales curves spending millions of dollars a year on advertising. The sales curve is basically going like that. Someone takes a look at it and says, our advertising is not doing very good like that. Let's cut it. They cut it, and guess what happens? The curve goes south.
Okay.
Advertising, in fact, was doing a yeoman's job, just keeping the curve up where it was. Now, how does advertising lower the prices? Well, it is communicating with many people at one time. It's sending it out to hundreds and thousands and millions of people at one time. Which makes the message per unit or cost per unit per person very, very cheap. This enables creates a much larger market than there otherwise would be, which then encourages the company to produce more of the product. And as you do that, cost per unit goes down in production.
Okay.
You get economies of scale pretty much across the board, and lowers the actual average price of the product. Example, despite the millions and probably billions of dollars that has been spent on Bayer aspirin, a typical example used in the economics journals. The 1930s, 1937 or 8, Bayer aspirin was about 67, 68 cents, something like that, for a 100-tablet bottle. Today it's up in, I don't know what, the $6, $8, $9 range. If you deflate it, the price of today, it turns out it's cheaper. And yet today we have a better product because we have the enteric-coated ones. So despite all that money, the real price, as economists would call it, of Bayer aspirin has also gone down. Now the other thing that people are looking at here is the difference between what's called a national brand and a private brand. Bayer aspirin is a national brand, sold all over the country. A private brand or a store brand is one that is sold only in certain stores with the store name on it. Big difference in price usually, about 20% or so. Bayer's up here and the store brand's down here. Well, what's the difference? Well, the store brand doesn't advertise. Yeah. But let's go back and look at the history. How did the store brand get there and come into existence? The national brands come first. They create the market. And then years later, sometimes decades later, stores realize they need some way in order to differentiate themselves. And so they go out and find someone to produce a version of the product. Sometimes it's produced by the national brander, but not always. And so they can just put it right up on the shelf next to the national brand. Yes, they haven't advertised, so they can easily get their point of difference with a lower price. And so they have the cheaper price. And that's the source of this discrepancy. If we're to be fair to Bayer aspirin, we should take, they created the market, they made it possible for this to happen, put some of the money back over here, and you would balance it out.
Okay. All right, so your argument then is ethically, advertising is beneficial both for the company advertising and for the consumer.
Yes.
If you parse all the issues out correctly. So it's a win-win transaction here, and it's also economically efficient, both in terms of information dispersal and production costs, and so forth. All right, that sounds great. All right, the book's called In Defense of Advertising. Professor Jerry Kirkpatrick, thanks for talking with us.
Thank you.